This isn't going to be a rant exactly, but more like a crusade. The intellectual property of Ironstorm has been under attack for many years now, and is close to being completely forgotten. Fortunately, Pope Urban II has issued a huge call to arms, and True Review is more than happy to take up the cause and bring this game back into the spotlight for the next 20 minutes until you all inevitably forget about this one all over again. So much in the same way as the rant I made on Prince of Persia Warrior Within, I'm going to be spending most of this video talking about how awesome this game was, and still is. Though we'll probably have some negative thrown in there, cause hey, this game isn't perfect either. Far from it in fact. But anyway, let's go on a little journey, shall we? Deus Ex 1 was released in 2000 and was met with great success. It took a very topical approach to its story, in that this was set around the time where we were only just breathing a sigh of relief that the whole Y2K thing didn't happen, and conspiracy theories were rife. Set in a dystopian future, Deus Ex follows the story of a nano-augmented special agent called JC Denton, who was originally tasked with serving the interests of a UN-based special forces agency, but after it turns out that the world is pretty much under the thumb of an evil organisation, you chin them all off, join the resistance, and try to bring freedom back to the globe. If I had to summarise this game for anyone who's never played it before, imagine an FPS RPG version of a futuristic and more epic James Bond story. This game was lovingly crafted to be perfect. The amount of skills you could possess means that you could approach each map in a different way. You could go in guns akimbo and waste everyone, you could try to slip past the guards, leaving them none the wiser by picking the locks or finding a hidden passageway around them. You could lay traps about the place and technically let the enemy kill themselves. Or you could go for a non-lethal takedown, which is always the most silent takedown. Sometimes you could even talk your way out of a situation. There are even cases where you don't even have to do anything. You see, Deus Ex 1 is one of the most open games I've ever come across. You have your mission, sure, but that doesn't mean you always have to do it. You're told to rescue Gunter during the opening mission, but you can just not bother if you don't want to. He'll tell you off later on, but who cares? You're still free to choose whether to actually do parts of the mission or not. And the boss fight against Anna Navarro could be won by simply running out of the room and slamming the door in her face. And with how vastly open this game is in terms of approach and playstyles, you'll easily find that your second, third, fourth and so on playthroughs are completely different than the last one. I was hooked on this game back in 2007 for nearly the whole year, because every time I played it, something different happened. Just when I thought I'd seen everything, I found something new and huge that I didn't know existed. And that was my experience playing this game. Time well spent, if I do say so myself. But this isn't where I was first introduced to this franchise. No, let's go back a few more years and let me set the scene. I started my first job in the summer of 2004. It was a convenient part-time job that paid a little above the minimum wage. I worked solidly for about 3 months and finally I was able to buy my own PC. This PC came with some free games, some of them I thought were okay, like Hitman Contracts and Roller Coaster Tycoon, but 2 I thought were amazing. And they were Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time and Deus Ex Invisible War. This was the first time I had played any game in either of these series and I fell in love with them big time. However, I was more into Deus Ex than I was Prince of Persia, though I still genuinely loved that game too. Deus Ex Invisible War for me was like being taken into a strange and unfamiliar setting and having the leash taken off of my neck. I was dumped into this futuristic and dangerous setting and told in a calming voice that I can pretty much do whatever the hell I liked. And you may be thinking that, wait, aren't you going to be confused as to what's going on, seeing as you haven't played the original? To which I say, nay good sir, for this game is set about 20 to 25 years later and is its own thing. The original Deus Ex gave you several endings to choose from, but as it turns out, the true canon ending was all of them. JC kills Bob Page, merges with Helios, and then blows up Area 51. As a result, global society collapses and everyone returns to a more simpler age. Invisible War is set at a time when society is starting to return to what we sort of remember it to be. Small pocket societies are starting to spring up, and with it, powerful groups are starting to emerge. You play the part of Alex D. Guess what the D stands for? You are part of some sort of special operative training facility where you'll eventually be sold to the highest bidder to make the world a better place. But before any of that happens, the facility gets attacked by some terrorists and you flee. It is here when you come into contact with two powerful groups, the WTO, who's focused on trade, law and prosperity, and the Order Church, who are rich in morals but don't have two pennies to rub together. And it is here where you'll be forced to pick a side and chin the Order Church off forever, because why work in a slum when you can work in a cushy office? It's also around this time when your best friend, called Billy Adams, starts chinning you off in turn, even if you do join the church, to the point where the words "inevitable boss fights" might as well be placed above her head in flashing neon lights. The early stages of the game will get you to do odd jobs for the side you chose, which usually involves pissing the other side off. However, what made this game pure magic for me was that the main story didn't demand your complete and undivided attention. You were given a mission, and you had to get there yourself, but hang on, there's all these other places I could go to. I wonder what's there. And when you do check them out, you'll either find side quests, or even loot just neatly tucked out of the way, which will help you in main quests later on. By all means, be a cunt! Break into Club Vox, sneak through the air ducts and lift everything kept in the company safe. Make contact with the black market and gain access to power-ups you wouldn't get elsewhere. Hey, there's an ATM here, thanks very much. Or you could go over to the Emerald Suites and break into every apartment and ruin it just because you could. It doesn't serve to improve your gameplay, but it's fun.
And I'll go into people's houses at night and wreck up the place.
Ooh, bread. Much in the same way as the last game, you've got different power-ups in the form of bio-infusions and biomods, which grants you extra speed or makes you more silent when you move, etc. Pretty much the same as the last game, and much in the same way, they can be upgraded as you go through the game as well. You've also got different factions and multiple endings, much like the last game, and it's entirely up to you who you join. You can join the Evil Knights Templar if you want, that's certainly an option open to you, and much like with the last game, this one has stuff hidden away out of sight, so it's really within your interests to search fucking everywhere if you want to get everything out of this game. However, the main criticisms I've encountered from others over Deus Ex 2 are to do with the story and some of the design changes that were made. Deus Ex 1 was set in a decaying and oppressive world, where the social elite are eroding the lower classes away for their own benefit, and global dominion was on the table. And we all loved it because of it. Invisible War, on the other hand, does not have that same feeling to it. Many have cited that the atmosphere, setting, and even the overall story has suffered because of this, and as a result, the overall story is an inferior one to that of the original. I actually disagree with that statement. Now, I'm not here to say that Deus Ex 2 was better, because I don't think it was, to be fair, and Deus Ex 1 is certainly my favourite out of the two. However, I disagree that Deus Ex 2 should be criticised for its setting and atmosphere. You have to keep in mind the setting itself. This is about 25 years later. The world has changed dramatically in that time, and what was true back then no longer applies anymore. I'd argue that, considering this game's own premise, the devs did the best job they could have in creating an interesting and interwoven story that revolves around several factions all vying for power, with you stuck in the middle of it. Considering the setting of this game, you couldn't get a Deus Ex 1 clone going on here, so Invisible War had to both be and feel different to that of its predecessor. And with that in mind, I'd say that Ironstorm did a fucking good job of it. Invisible War does a fantastic job of portraying the greater divide between the social classes as enclaves form around slums, how the rich and elites live just up the road from the poor and downtrodden. You really do get a feel for how terrible life is for the post-collapse poor as they struggle to scratch out a meagre living, on top of dealing with the local issues, as well as their reasons for siding with certain factions. In short, I'd say that the developers took the most realistic concept of what would have happened after the events of Deus Ex 1 and managed to deliver a damned interesting tale from it. But as for the issue on design changes, I've actually got to agree with the gaming community on that one. Several changes were made and certain elements were removed when it came to the second game, and I don't really get why that was. First of all, skills and abilities have been removed. In the first game, you would gain experience points from getting stuff done, which you could then use to improve your skills with certain guns, your swimming skills, and how proficient you were with lockpicks and multi-tools. Invisible War got rid of all of that, and I still don't know why that was even to this day. Sure, it was one less thing to think about, but at the same time, it was one less thing to think about, which sort of made me less invested in it. The first game made you really value lockpicks and multi-tools, as they could literally improve your chances of getting through an area alive. That is, if you weren't aware of that one glitch where bringing up the menu whilst picking a lock and waiting for a while would only use one lockpick instead of how many you needed. But in Invisible War, these skills have been totally removed along with lockpicks too. Now all you need to get through a door are some multi-tools and you can just hoard them. You see, it always seems like people are quick to write off this game because it's not exactly like the original Deus Ex, but give credit where credit's due. This game has some parts that were laughable even back then. Like how none of the characters can move their heads. So when more than two people are talking and another person speaks, the other two have to shuffle awkwardly around so they're facing the one who's talking. Or how dumb some of the dialogue is, or even the enemy AI in general.
Sorry, this isn't Pequods. That's on 107. This is the nanoformer bot kennel. You know, we keep this guy's friendly.
Poison! Neurotoxin! Poison! Neurotoxin!
Also, this chair bleeds for some reason. In conclusion, this game hasn't aged particularly well, I'll admit that. Other games have come out since that have been able to offer a far more open and enjoyable experience than this game did. Even Morrowind springs to mind, and that came out a year before this one did. But don't let the fact that the sequel is not the first one cloud your mind. Go into it with an open mind, and I guarantee you that there is a lot of enjoyment and fun to be had from this one. And I'm surprised I went through this whole video with only one reference to the recut.